Hello, my name is Terje Mikael Hasle Joranger. I'm the director of the Norwegian Emigrant Museum in Ottestad near Hamar, Norway. And I have the pleasure to welcome you all to this book launch of the anthology uh, Nordic Whiteness and Migration to the USA, a historical exploration of identity. The book or the anthology was published by Routledge and issued in early August of 2020. A book launch took place, was held at the Norwegian Emigrant Museum on August 26th, 2020. But we have chosen to include the recordings of that event on the Norwegian Emigrant Museum website. We have chosen to hold this book launch in English due to the fact that all of our authors are fluent in English, and in order to reach out to a larger public outside of Norway. I wish to extend my gratitude and congratulations to my colleagues who have contributed to the making of this anthology. My co-editor Jana Sverdluk and one of the authors in the anthology, Ellen Marie Jensen, were with me at the book launch on August 26th, and we will be able to listen to the presentations on elsewhere on this website. In addition, our two co-editors, Erica Jackson and Peter Kivisto from the US, have extended their greetings, along with one of the authors, Betty Bergland. You will also be able to find their presentations on this website. All of us will present various perspectives to the concept of Nordic whiteness that are relevant to the content of the anthology. A few words about the Norwegian Emigrant Museum. The museum was established in 1955 in Oslo. It was later moved to Hamar and then to the present site in Ottestad in 1996. Its aim is to collect, conserve, research, and present documentation in order, quote, to increase general knowledge about Norwegian immigration, return migration, and immigration, the background and the process of migration, immigrants' cultural development in the receiving country, and, at large, their ties to Norway. End quote. The book launch took place in the Memorial Church of Norwegian Immigration, originally established in 1896 as the Oak Ridge Lutheran Church near Houston, Minnesota. The church is one of several buildings at the museum which were built by first, second, and third generation Norwegian Americans in the Midwest. They were all dismantled, shipped, and reconstructed on the museum site, and the buildings constitute a permanent outdoor exhibit about the culture that Norwegian Americans created in American society. The church opened on this site in 2002, and we have continued to use this church for various activities after it was moved to the museum site, including concerts and events. A CD about immigrant songs was recorded here 3 years ago. I think that it is important to make active use of these antique buildings on the museum grounds for seminars, presentations, and other activities tied to the museum's focus areas. Besides, this church has a symbolic meaning, as it represents a Norwegian American institution which served as a conserver of language and culture among white Norwegian immigrants. The Norwegian Emigrant Museum has taken an initiative to launch a national bicentennial commemoration of Norwegian immigration in 2025, and we cooperate with a number of institutions and organizations in Norway and in the United States. We have two main goals regarding this commemoration. It is to focus on the fact that the large immigration from Norway since 1825, numbering about 1 million immigrants worldwide, is largely neglected in contemporary discourse about immigration and integration. Second, we wish to create an awareness about understanding immigration and cultural encounters in present-day Norway through the knowledge about the Norwegian immigrant experience abroad. So the book launch of Nordic Whiteness and Migration to the USA is relevant both to the museum's goal to focus on the topic of immigration and to create an awareness that immigration from Norway and the Nordic countries took place, and that the book may help understand dynamics related both to present-day immigration experience to Norway and to the Nordic countries. The anthology is significant in its contribution to new perspectives in migration and ethnic studies. It is very timely regarding ongoing discussions about white identity, structural racism, and discrimination in various countries in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd in May of this year. I think that the anthology of Nordic whiteness will bring new perspectives to the debate climate about immigration from various countries and cultures to Norway and the Nordic countries, and that immigration history will help us understand and explain processes and dynamics that apply to recent immigrants to Nordic countries. Prior to 1967, Norway was a country with a high net immigration, but since 1967, Norway has been a country with a higher net immigration and thus has become a multicultural society. The anthology is especially useful in relating how the myth of whiteness affects the majority Norwegian population in their encounter with immigrant groups from various cultures for the last 5 decades. Also, the variation in immigrant groups also creates invisible hierarchies based on desirable immigrants and less desirable immigrants. The anthology also reminds us about the manner in which Norway has treated the indigenous population, the Sami, and minorities, including Kvenes, residents of Finnish extraction, Jews, Forest Finns, who settled in the border districts towards Sweden from the 17th century, the Roma or Gypsies, and the Romani Tatar populations. These underwent discrimination, racialization, and Norwegianization in a nation building process that extended from the mid 19th century and on to the 20th century. Language shifts, humiliation, and shaming were some of the ingredients in this process for these indigenous and minority populations. This also resembles the US federal treatment of the American Indian population, the Alaskan Natives, and other indigenous peoples. The anthology is a cooperative effort written by a group of scholars from Denmark, Finland, Norway, Sápmi, and the United States. Jana Sverdluk will present the contributors in her presentation, a little that you will see on this website. Immigrants to the United States from the Nordic countries may be regarded as privileged white immigrants whose credentials were not contested. They hailed from countries where whiteness was practically a non-existing trait, but which countries were more or less homogeneous in terms of culture. But it is on arrival that these Nordic immigrants to the United States became white. According to the Naturalization Act of 1790, quote, all free white persons of good character, end quote, all males had citizenship rights. They had the right to vote, to purchase land, and they were regarded as good citizens by the Anglo-Saxon elite. So there was a divide between those that the elite perceived as white and those who weren't. And those who weren't had to fight their way to become white in the racial hierarchy of the United States. In many ways, Nordic immigrants were privileged, as they were perceived as wanted immigrants, as model immigrants by an Anglo-Saxon elite. But this anthology also shows that groups from the Nordic countries were both contributed to and challenged American perceptions of race and white identity. Criticism against Norwegian American historiography is that it has largely studied the immigrant group itself in its own right and not its cultural development in the United States in their encounter with other groups. This anthology runs counter to the traditional presentation of Norwegian Americans in its own right. The anthology also forms the end of a long journey. On November 11, 2015, Jana Sverdluk and I organized a conference on Nordic whiteness at the National Library of Norway, co-hosted with the Norwegian American Historical Association Norway chapter. It had a focus on a historic and also a contemporary perspective on whiteness, and it included the present focus on the identity formation process among Nordic immigrants in the US in the 19th and 20th century, but it also included presentations about contemporary immigration to the Nordic countries. Jana Sverdluk and I initiated the editorial work toward creating an anthology that was partly based on peer reviews of manuscripts written by historians. Later, Peter Kivisto and Erica Jackson joined the project as editors, and we also added a couple of authors to the original team of scholars of Nordic immigration to the United States. I wish to thank Jana, Erica, and Peter for your cooperation during our editing process. And I wish to thank you all, Ellen Maria, Betty, Anders, Jørn, Hans Petter, Odd, and Alexi for your excellent chapters in the anthology. Thank you.